Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Good. So, nearly 5 months ago, I had the pleasure of meeting these brave women and man at the Oslo Freedom Forum. I was forced to go there by Alex Gladstein, a good friend of mine, and I am forever grateful. My name is Obi Nwosu. I am the CEO and founder of FEDI, which aims to bring Bitcoin and Bitcoin technology to billions of people around the world, including post-Soviet regions of the world. And that only existed because of the stories of these ladies and gentlemen. And we also saw Leopoldo Lopez from earlier as well. What we thought would be a good thing to do is to share those stories with you now, to show you how Bitcoin is borderless. Before we do that, we'll do some quick introductions. So, should we start?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lyudmyla. I represent Open Dialogue Foundation, human rights organization, which deals with human rights defending the post-Soviet region, but not only, Poland and Kazakhstan, and Hungary is all our focus.
Yes.
Hi, guys. Cool to be here today. My name is Jaroslav Likhachevsky. I'm originally from Belarus, but living here in the Netherlands for the last 5 years. I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I've never ever been to Bitcoin or any other crypto before 2020. I'm in artificial intelligence space, but the moment everything went completely wrong in my home country in Belarus, we find out that Bitcoin is the very powerful tool to help and support people there.
Anna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Chekhovi. I'm a financial director of the Anti-Corruption Foundation. Our Anti-Corruption Foundation is the organization that was founded by Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader. And as you know, Alexei Navalny today is in prison, and I'm here to talk about what we are dealing today with and how we use Bitcoin in our work.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lyudmyla. I am a human rights defender. I'm originally from Kazakhstan, but now I live in Belgium, in Brussels, where I receive political asylum. I work on politically motivated cases, and my home country, actually the regime in my home country, Kazakhstan, prosecuted me for my work, so that's why I have to live in Belgium.
So, what you'll notice is that none of these people are Bitcoiners or were Bitcoiners. They had a problem to solve. They had people they cared about, and in the end, every other system failed them, and they came to Bitcoin. Now, I've heard these stories, and what we want to do is share you some of these stories of how Bitcoin helped them solve their problems. So we'll start.
So in my case, I use Bitcoin and stablecoin, first of all, to save life in Ukraine, particularly since the second day of invasion, we were capable to deliver 100 bulletproof vests, helmets, hundreds of medical equipment sets, just because we were capable to do fundraising thanks to Bitcoin. And if you think it's just a coin, I mean, it's sometimes such kind of talk. For us, it's an instrument to save lives. This is the first point. And I'm really grateful for everyone who is making this possible. The second one, it's a tool, it's actually a bank of last resort when you're under attack of 3 states. And this is the case in my situation, in my organization, where was coordinated attack organized since 2018, and we were effectively terminated, banks terminated our bank accounts just because of abuse of mutual legal assistance instruments, so constant politically motivated propaganda accusations from 3 states. It's Kazakhstan, Moldova during Plahotniuc time, and Poland. And just because we were capable to discover for us this bank of last resort, we are capable to both help Ukraine, but also to survive while being completely debunked in Belgium. I want to say it's not somewhere far away. It's just happening in Belgium. So in this situation, you may ask, did we try other instruments before we came to Bitcoin? Of course, we tried to use, legal different instruments. We went to the court. But at the end of the day, every regime wants to exhaust your power, exhaust your capacity to defend human rights, exhaust your sources, just basically frozen you the same like bank accounts. And actually, thanks to Bitcoin, we're capable not only not to be frozen, but effectively save lives in many, many countries. So maybe, Jaroslav, you will say also your experience.
Yeah, I'll try to share a story 2 years long with the next 8 minutes, which is going to be tricky. But yeah, as I mentioned, before 2020, I was living my exciting life here in the Netherlands, in Den Haag, working on artificial intelligence for healthcare, dealing with the best medical doctors and professors around the world, till something very wrong and terrible happened in my country. We had the political crisis for the last 30 years, but this time it went too far. We have a dictator. His name is Alexander Lukashenko. And it seems finally people decided enough is enough, and we have to change him for a new political leadership, which led to huge protests. We had around 1 million people on the streets with a 10 million population in the country, and it led to huge violence, huge repression, and lots of bad stuff going on. At that moment, we decided that we have to be involved somehow, and we have to contribute with our expertise and our experience and start building digital tools to support civil society and democratic leadership. One of the first products that we've built, called Belarus Solidarity Foundation, which is a Dutch organization, which aimed to support people who are repressed in the country, people who are protesting, people who are on strikes on the state-owned factories. And we've been fundraising extensively in the Western world, mostly using Dutch banks for this. And the biggest problem for us was to deliver this support to people inside of the country. Why? Our partners, we have another partner fund in UK. They've been doing the same stuff a little bit earlier than us, and they've been using regular banking system and bank wire transfer to deliver this support to people inside of the country. It took just several weeks for the regime to arrest bank accounts and physically arrest people who've been receiving this support, because they consider us as an extremist organization, and if you're donating, you're financing the extremist organization. If you're receiving funds, you're financed by extremist organization. That's why we had to design and develop Bitcoin and USDT-based system to deliver these funds to Belarus. And it was a huge success, because till now, for more than 2 years, no one ever been arrested because receiving support from us. It's working that good that we are working closely with European and US institutions, starting from trade unions that supporting their colleagues in Belarus, ending with officials that need to support someone, like, let's say, paying out pensions for Holocaust survivors in Belarus and in Russia, and they can't do it because at the moment in Russia all of the banks are under the sanctions, in Belarus half of the banks are under the sanctions, but also all of the banking system is completely transparent to the regimes, and they can get any kind of private information and transaction information from the local banks, and it's just not safe and not private to use traditional banking for this. And then when we saw that it's working good, we've started building, like, we have basically a failed state in Belarus. So healthcare is falling apart, education, judiciary system, like basically every social institute. So we decided, okay, if Belarusian state is failing with serving its people, we have to build a parallel institutions and parallel services. For example, one day, 2021, middle of COVID pandemic, Lukashenko decided it would be fun to fire hundreds of doctors from Belarusian healthcare because of their political position. And if you're working in a healthcare in Belarus and you're fired by state, you are not able to find a new job. So what we've done, we've built our own telemedicine platform, hired these doctors, and they are able to provide consultations online for people in Belarus. But then we have a problem to pay them salaries and collect payments from people inside of the country. If we're using traditional banks, it's again transparent to the regime, and all of these people under the threat. So again, we're using Bitcoin for transactions because it's safe and private. And then we've started building the same services for lawyers, for school teachers, and many, many others, which led us to the point when we decided, okay, why don't we build a completely new digital state from scratch? We don't need an old state there anymore, and there's a 10 million population over there that need to be helped. And at the moment, we are doing it, and as we're building a completely new state, we're also building a completely new financial system, and we don't think we're sure that we can't use existing banks in Belarus for the financial system, but we learned that we can use Bitcoin for that. So hopefully we'll have the case when the whole country is switched its financials from banks to Bitcoin. That's the story. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Anya.
So our story is quite long, but I will try to make it short. So basically what our organization is doing, we're fighting the regime in Russia. We're trying to destroy Putin's dictatorship today. And how we started to use Bitcoin? We started to use it in 2016 when Alexei Navalny decided to run for president in Russia. And we started our presidential campaign together with crowdfunding campaign. And already at that moment, we realized that it was not a good idea to collect donations only in fiat. And we decided to have both options, to collect donations in fiat and in Bitcoin. So because maybe, as you know, Russian banking system is totally under the government's control. There is government surveillance in Russia. And we were absolutely right doing it this way because in 2018, our bank accounts were arrested under a fabricated criminal case, and this kind of arrests happened over and over again during several years, and our bank accounts were arrested together with the money that we were collecting. So basically we lost a lot of fiat donations that we were collecting from our donors, from our supporters, and every time we found a solution how to deal with this problem, and one of those solutions was Bitcoin, our savings that we had in cryptocurrency. But in 2020, Alexei Navalny was assassinated and he almost died. He was poisoned. And after receiving treatment in Germany, when he came back to Russia, he was immediately arrested at the airport, and after that, our organization was labeled as an extremist organization in Russia. And it became impossible for us to keep operating in Russia because it became illegal for us and dangerous. So our organization had to leave the country. So we relocated from Russia to Lithuania, where we are based right now. And the problem is that as Russian NGO, we used to receive financial support only from Russian donors. All support was, the most of the support was in fiat from Russian citizens. And since we moved to Europe, since we are labeled as an extremist organization, for us it became impossible to receive donations in fiat from Russians to Europe, because there's government surveillance over every transactions Russians do. And if they support us financially, it means that they support extremist organization, and it puts them under great danger. So the only way possible for us to receive support, financial support from Russians, is through cryptocurrency. So this is how this was a solution for us to receive donations from Russia. But receiving money is not the only problem that we faced. Today, there is a huge problem for us as an NGO. Our NGO is registered in Europe, and for us, there's a big problem to send money from Europe to Russia, because there are a lot of people in Russia, from political prisoners to political activists, who are fighting with the regime inside of the country, who are absolutely deprived of financial support from NGOs like ours, from human rights organizations that had to leave Russia. It became absolutely impossible for such organizations like ours to support financially those people who are fighting the regime inside of the country, to support those people who are fighting the regime, risking their lives and their freedom. And the only way possible to support them is with cryptocurrency, because European banks do not allow to do transactions to Russia through the banking system, because Russia is under sanctions. But also, as an NGO, we cannot buy cryptocurrency on the territory of Europe, because European banks don't want to do anything with NGOs. And even if we found a solution how to buy cryptocurrency, how to buy Bitcoin as an NGO, we cannot send it to we cannot send it to Russia to support those people, because the new regulations, the anti-money laundering regulations, and know your customer policy, it forces us to show all the data of the recipient of the funds in Russia. And if we show their passports, their contracts, this data can be leaked, and it can be leaked to Russian government, and it puts those recipients of the funds at a huge risk today. So basically, we are today in a gray zone of a banking system, and we are in a gray zone of a cryptocurrency system, because we cannot support those people, and we shouldn't be in a gray zone. We should have a green light to do what we have to do. We should have a green light to fight the regime. We should have a green light to stop this war in Ukraine. But basically, we are dealing with such problems today, and I find it really stupid, because those people are deprived of financial support, and this is the goal of Russian regime. Putin wants them to be deprived of financial support, and these European regulations, they only help it. So I personally, together with activists from other countries, we are today doing our advocacy for Bitcoin. We're trying to raise the awareness of this issue on the level of European governments, European authorities, to find a mechanism how to solve this problem. So this is pretty much it.
Thank you. So for me, when I first heard these stories, I thought it's only a few countries, but one really important piece of information is to understand that people living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes or dictatorships around the world are more than half the people on the planet. Here in the West, we are the minority. Fiat works within the borders of free and democratic countries. But if you want a currency that's borderless, you have to go beyond fiat. And that was the point that really struck home. But please, Bota.
Yeah. Okay. So let me start with my story, so it will explain why we started looking at Bitcoin and stablecoin, and why we have to look at the problem a little bit broader, not just payment mechanism. So as I mentioned, I'm originally in Kazakhstan. I lived in Brussels. I opened a consultancy company there, and I was working on the pro bono, actually, on politically motivated cases when people were prosecuted by the regime in Kazakhstan. And one day I was working on the very, very complicated and interesting case. It was a wife of a political opponent who was kidnapped by Kazakhstan authorities from Italy and was taken to Kazakhstan and was under house arrest. And I had to take her testimony. We used Skype. And a few days after, we had this conversation. I wrote her witness statement. I was in all newspapers in Kazakhstan. There was a smear campaign against me. And then I learned that actually Kazakhstan requested Interpol to put me on the most wanted list. So one day you're like a lawyer, you're living in a country, like traveling. Another day you have Interpol issuing red notice against you. It completely changes your outlook on life. To kind of cut the story short, later Interpol removed my case from the database as politically motivated. And I have to mention that with Luda we worked a lot with a lot of human rights defenders. We put together a coalition on the reform of Interpol, of that system that was really a black box, but non-democratic states abuse it in order to prosecute their opponents. So Kazakhstan tried to get me out of Belgium in various ways, and they tried to extradite me twice unsuccessfully. They made numerous criminal complaints against me. They even sent agents, and Federal Police of Belgium unfolded a plot, a kidnapping plot against me, and 3 people went to jail for that. And after all of those things, then the Kazakhstan, found a very simple way to attack a person. They basically write into your banks and saying that you are an extremist and a money launderer. And I have to say, Obi, you are in a very good company, because you have a threat to national security and money launderer and extremist and money launderer and moi, extremist and money launderer. So... So it's very easy to put that label on a person, because governments have those tools, but then it's like your life can be completely destroyed if you just, if you don't have tools to fight it. And when Kazakhstan sent, request to my bank to get my personal information, they received it very quickly. So Belgium was protecting me. Imagine this absurd, very absurd situation. Belgium was protecting me, but Belgian banks released all my banking information. Really, and what banking information tells about you? It tells about basically the whole story, right? It's like very easy to find, your weak points. And in my case, my weak point was my family. So what Kazakhstan did, they arrested my brother who lived in Kazakhstan. They took him hostage. He's like a 50-year-old man with 5 children, and they arrested him and tortured him, trying to force him to convince me to go back to Kazakhstan. So we sometimes have to deal with the states that are actually like using this kind of very much terrorist approach with respect to their opponents. And when things like that happen, it's obvious, you know, there is a smear campaign, and Luda faced it, and Navalny Foundation faced it. And those things stay online, right? And how banks approach it, even if there is no legitimate criminal case against you, you've never been sentenced in a normal country by a normal court, you're not guilty in anything, but some guy somewhere, you know, in the back office in the compliance department judges you, and they make decision to terminate you, your bank account. And this is a problem that we see everywhere more and more, but our case is a bit extreme, but we see that it's really shrinking space for NGOs, especially NGOs that are doing crowdfunding, that NGOs that are working with you know, dictatorial countries with authoritarian regimes, that banks, because of this increased cost of compliance, because of their anti-money laundering regulation and anti-financing of terrorist activity regulations, which is very important, you know, regulations, but in the end of the day, the cost for the banks becomes so high that they prefer not to have us as the clients at all. And we are you know, we are a certain segment of the population, but they are actually much broader people that are being right now excluded from the financial system altogether. And what, you know, we don't have much time, but I think that it's very important to mention that when we started looking at Bitcoins and stablecoin, we realize that we have to look at the regulation, how it's actually regulated. And what we see in Europe and we see everywhere in the world, that basically crypto asset markets, they are going to be regulated the same way as banks, as existing financial system, right? We already, I don't know if on the other panels people talk about the MiCA regulations and transfer of fund regulations that will be adopted very soon. But there's also very, very important piece of regulation that often overlooked by crypto asset professionals, that it's a new package that is coming on the European Union. It's anti-money laundering regulations, the 6th package already. And so these areas will be regulated. Right now, fewer and fewer banks want to deal with NGOs. And we feel that as soon as those regulations come into place, there will be the same problem for us end users. So what we decided to do, we have to kind of find a solution. We decided to do what we know, we basically started getting together, trying to identify more and more cases when crypto assets are used for humanitarian purposes to defend human rights. And we go to the regulator. And what we get? We get very negative response initially, because there is a perception, people don't know much about crypto. They just hear it and kind of freak out, because the general perception is that it's used by terrorists, money launderers, criminals, and it's bad for the environment. That's it. So we go and we say, excuse me, but we are the end users. Yeah. You have to see and recognize that there is a legitimate purpose to use these assets. Then we go and say, and for us it's very important that we as human rights defenders, we don't want to be associated with something that it's our ethical principle, that's something that is harmful for the environment. So we started talking to Bitcoin miners, and we learned more about proof of work, actually. And we learned that in many instances, it's actually Bitcoin mining right now with the current pricing, etc. It actually facilitates the adoption of renewables. So it's the other way around. But guys, there is a big problem because we go and we talk about it, but we don't come from the industry. Yeah. We need your stories, we need your business cases, we need your proof. Proof of your work, sorry for this, no pun intended. But we need to show that actually it's used for legitimate purposes, not criminals, and we can have actually better environmental impact. And right now we are very much concerned. We spoke before, like on the micro-regulation, and kind of we're fighting a little bit about their, like very negative attitude towards proof of work. But now, it's not banned in Europe, so everyone kind of relaxed. But I have to tell you that you should not be relaxed, because this issue being brought up all the time. And why it's being brought up? Because right now, what we are facing here in Europe, it's a serious energy crisis. And what the politicians are very good at is to find a scapegoat for their failed energy policies. And who's going to be the scapegoat? Guess.
Bitcoin.
Proof of work. So this is now we have to really, because they can go for the, easiest solution. Ban it again and kind of pretend and going to go back to their constituents and say that, you see, we are doing something. But we have to go and explain to them, actually, Bitcoin, at the end of the day, it's not only the bank of last resort, but it's actually the buyer of the energy of last resort. Exactly. And we have to show cases from Europe, from around the world. So we're here with actually a certain agenda. We want to be able to kind of get to know you and learn about your work. And if you're doing something that kind of facilitates adoption of renewables, please talk to us.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I've been involved in some of these conversations, providing the sort of Bitcoiner element of the discussion where necessary, but at this stage, these guys are more of an expert than me on Bitcoin mining, proof of work, and every aspect. And I think it's a dual process. On one hand, we work with European Parliament, regulators around the world. But on the other hand, we build systems, like in the case of Belarus, or globally, like in the case of FEDI and FEDIMINT, that can work no matter where you are. Because sometimes you have rational and reasonable regulators in some jurisdictions, and other places you may have more difficulty there. But we were talking just now about some of the challenges with banking and how long, even after, if someone uses negative smears against you, that can affect your ability to get banking. And so you needed other solutions. As background, I used to run a Bitcoin exchange. It was the longest running Bitcoin exchange in the UK. And so I know full well, as a regulated person, how it worked. You have a number of things, both objective and subjective, to look at. And the cost of doing those checks goes up and up and up. And if you're onboarding thousands of customers a week, and you have automated systems that tell you there's a Russian story about someone that has been flagged as a negative media, you're not going to hire someone to translate that and then figure out that it was taken to court and they overturned it 2 years later or so on. You're just going to say, no, next, because they're 1 in 100. But the problem is, when it comes to these ladies and gentlemen, and to Leopoldo and others, is that these 1s in 100 represent and are trying to support tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people. And so not giving them access to some sort of financial instrument is affecting far more people than the people you let go of. So, do you want to say about what happened to you in terms of your experience in that regard?
Yeah, sure. So what I mentioned is that I'm a threat to national security. Actually, I'm a threat to national security to 3 countries, Kazakhstan, Poland, and Moldova during Plakhatnyuk time, just because we defended judges, entrepreneurs who were politically persecuted, lawyers, and political prisoners, victims of torture. And for this reason, because we were effective on international level, we brought these cases to European Parliament, European Commission, Parliament Assembly of Council of Europe. Since it was huge pressure, international pressure, politician pressure, and also financial pressure to these governments of authoritarian regime, they decided to eliminate me, basically threw out from the Europe. They placed me like what I was placed in Interpol red notice, and I was placed in Schengen information list ban. So I was assumed being kind of as a terrorist. One day I was basically arrested in Belgium on all of this fake accusation, and actually it was initiated by Minister of Special Services of Poland in coordination with Kazakhstan and Moldova at that time. It was 2018. And I was deported forcibly from Belgium, and of course I started to contact with all my friends, politicians, journalists. Then, being threat to national security in Poland, I was getting visas as a national interest in Germany, Switzerland, France, Belgium, UK, and I'm capable now to bring this reform of Schengen information system back. I was capable to help other people who was in the same position like me, who was politically persecuted but didn't know how to basically defend their rights. So I started to be an example, but at the same time, the propaganda machine which affected me, it was in 28 languages. So if you just Google me, you would find in such weird websites and in different languages smear campaign against me, which is completely unjustified. And what we did, of course, we tried to defend ourselves in the court, but during this time, you have to survive. And this is the reason why Bitcoin became, for me, is a tool of surviving in Europe, not somewhere in Kazakhstan, not somewhere in Africa, not somewhere in a weird country, in Europe, in Belgium, right? So we, of course, went to the court, and we won historical defamation case against Deputy Minister of Special Services of Poland. So being foreigner, I'm Ukrainian, right? Being NGO, so we have really small capacity. We were capable to challenge and win defamation case against the special services of Poland. But even with this, we don't have remedies. And when I'm asked by politicians in European Parliament and other institutions, so why actually you started to use Bitcoin? I say, because I have no other instrument. This is only my bank of last resort. This is how I can continue my human rights work, because different regimes started to basically, they wanted to deprive me the rights of being human rights defender. And then actually, thanks to stablecoins and Bitcoin, I'm capable to continue my work no matter what. So this is a real story of end users, and all of us, we created a coalition. We are looking for everyone who would like to join to us from actually crypto community, particularly Bitcoins. So we can share as end users our story, but you can share actually, as Bota said, your proof of work, why you are absolutely normal businessman, why you're absolutely legitimate businessman, and why you shouldn't be banned, why you should be supported to be able to act in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you see what I mean? These stories are amazing, and it made me form a company because of them. And that was one thing I wanted to finish on. We've got Bitcoiners here, some technical, some from business, some just supporters. And you have already benefited from Bitcoin. Is there anything that you want, now you have the opportunity to let people know, and also at home as well, watching this live? I mean, from my point of view, I believe this changed my life, hearing their stories. And I've committed myself, and our team, because I have an incredible group of people, business partners to work with, who when they heard the stories understood. We've committed ourselves to doing whatever it is possible to support these individuals and the institutions that they are working with. So that's what I've done, and I hope that other Bitcoiners hear the rallying cry and do the same. This is an important section of the community globally, more than half the people on the planet, guys. So, but you guys, is there anything that anyone can answer that you want people to know?
Yes. So, as you can see from our stories in countries like mine, countries like ours, Bitcoin is not a vitamin anymore, it's a painkiller. So it's a completely different level. We are talking about the security issues. It's economic security, financial security, and physical security. And Bitcoin can solve at least two of them. It enables giving people works, and it's enabled to do financial savings that wouldn't be taken by the governments, by the regimes. And as Obi already mentioned, it's more than half of world's population living in countries like this. And the other great point that Leopold brought back in Norway, that all of the dictators, they are not living by themselves. They're living by the same playbook, and they're supporting each other, and Putin supporting lots of them around the globe. So from Venezuela and Iran and Palestine and post-Soviet countries and Myanmar and Northern Korea, like all around the globe, the same problems and the same people behind them. So if they're working together, we have to work together. So my ask is to put more efforts to build products and global products that could be used by people not in the Western countries, but in developing countries, in the countries under the yoke of the authoritarian and dictatorship regimes, because it will allow us to reinvent the democracy itself, to reinvent the states, and make a move with the leg that's behind, and bring this country forward, which will lead to moving all of the world forward, also the Western countries that also have lots of problems these days.
I find it really funny every time when I talk to guys from Bitcoin community, when I tell them about their impact, about their contribution that they make to our work, they're every time surprised because they didn't know about it. And every time it's the same on the other side. When I tell about it to my colleagues or to other political activists, they are the same way surprised because they didn't know that there is such a community standing behind those tools. They didn't know about it. So my message to the Bitcoin community is keep working, keep believing in what you do, keep creating tools for us, and we promise to spread the information, to raise the awareness about what you do, and we promise to advocate for the tools that you make, because as a political activist, I believe that today there is not more important work than fighting against the dictatorships in the world, and I'm very grateful that you guys are together with us on the front line doing that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll just give you a little story that came up just a few days ago from the, we met at one of the European politicians, the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe. And he says, oh, I know everything about Bitcoin. And we're like, how come you know everything? It's like, I made a mistake once. I said that Bitcoins is used only by criminals. And I was bombarded by angry tweets, emails, letters, etc. So I met actually with some Bitcoin activists, and it completely changed my mind. And this is, guys, it's a kind of a story, a message that you have to defend your rights. You have to defend the reputation of your community. Because we as users, we kind of the ultimate beneficiaries, right? So fight for your rights is advice from human rights defenders, and fight for your reputation. Make sure that no politician can go and say and put blame on you and put smear on you. Fight for your rights.
Yeah.
Finally, you want to add anything?
I just want to say that we are the same activists as you guys. You are freedom fighter. You're fighting for something what is normally every dictator wants to deprive us, our financial freedoms. And it unites us. So let's do it together.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the first time we had a long conversation, and it was at the end of that Lyudmyla actually made me aware that I am actually also a human rights defender. I've got a different tool, it's code, but it's still the same tool. We are these guys without the danger. But we are there to support them, and thank you very much, and thank you for listening to the stories.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine Analyst Desk. That was fire, Borderless Bitcoin.
Absolutely amazing.
Ladies, what do you think?
It's amazing. It was the last panel of the conference, and it was just a summary of why we're all here, why we all Bitcoin. Just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. We're freedom fighters, and obviously people around the world need to wake up to the real tyranny and fascism that's going on around the world. And I'm not talking about the fascism they claim on mainstream media. But it's amazing to see all these people coming together and fighting for the same cause, that is human rights.
It's also cool to hear the stories, like the real stories, and how Bitcoin is different for different people. It just fills up the gap, fills up the need. So do you need an instrument to flee the country? Here's Bitcoin. Do you need an instrument to protect your wealth against inflation? Here's Bitcoin. And just whatever you need Bitcoin is filling it up.
Yeah, and Obi said right there at the end, he didn't realize that he was a human rights activist until you meet people like that. And just by being a Bitcoiner, that is what you are, essentially. Yeah. And I wish on my panel this morning, I had the two ladies on from the Financial Times, and one of them was talking about, you guys are just here for number go up. You don't care about, as much as you opine that you care about the global south or underdeveloped nations or those people that live under tyrannical dictatorships. You're just essentially here because you want to get rich and you just won't admit it. I hope she watches this panel.
And mind you, there are enough women in Bitcoin. There are women in Bitcoin, just by the way.
Well, there's you two and those amazing ladies.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's go to the main stage where David Bailey is going to give the last talk.
Yep.
Closing notes.